90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. We have a special program of interest to lawyers out there and others as well about how to live longer and thrive. And our special guest is Dr. David Bernstein. He's a geriatrician, and we want to thrive and live long enough to use his care. Dr. Bernstein, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you for inviting me to be on your program, Ken.
And lawyers have a lot on their plates, and many other professional people do, and even students. Everyone has a lot on their plate, emerging from COVID and trying to survive in the world of business. Talk about some of the things that you have found help people to thrive and live longer, including lawyers.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Ken, because in my career as a geriatrician, I saw lots of people and I saw what worked for them. So the first set of things that I noticed was people who maintained a goal and a purpose in life were the people who thrived. They had something to get up and live for.
And does that go ahead?
It includes having a job or staying at work or funding something in retirement. So those are some of the things that they felt a purpose for.
And do people sometimes have to shift their perspective or their exact nature of their work in order to feel fulfilled?
You know, there were a lot of patients in my practice who retired and then went on to do something else. They just had their career, they were satisfied with it, but they were giving people and they wanted to give back, or they wanted to just give back to their community. So they went and became board members. I had one of my favorite patients who became a security guard at a historic hotel.
And part of it was being in that historical place.
It was a historical place, and he retired from New York, and he told me that if he stayed home with his wife all day and all night, that one of them would end up in the grave and the other in prison.
Okay. Now, I know that one of your suggestions is to avoid stress, and it's, of course, easier said than done, especially among lawyers. But can you give us some general ideas on how to do that?
Well, there are a couple of different things. One is just look out for the things that cause you stress and figure out ways to avoid them. I think that's one of the keys. The other thing that we're finding is that there's some real benefit when people can learn to meditate or adopt a life of mindfulness, where they're present all the time into what's going on in their lives.
And can you just define mindfulness a little more for us?
Well, you know, if you're driving in the car, you're either looking out your front windshield at what's in front of you, or you're looking at your rearview mirror with what's behind you. But the whole idea about life is remaining in the present. Like, I'm right here now on a radio program with you. I'm not thinking about what happened this morning or not planning for tomorrow, just being in the moment.
So if someone is walking their dog or having a cup of coffee or walking among nature, it's important just to reflect on that present environment.
Exactly. And especially the being with nature, that has a whole other sense of being with nature and being present. And
having the walk has other physical benefits as well. So it's important for someone to take time out, and important for lawyers and colleagues to encourage people to take time out. Take a 5-minute walk or a 15-minute walk or a 1-hour walk and do something else to bring out that mindfulness.
Sure. And if you want to be able to continue and have a stable career, those are some of the things that need to be incorporated into your being.
And it's going to preserve your life and reduce your stress as well. Because everyone has stress. It's a question of managing it and balancing it.
Very true.
And I do want to mention to our audience that we recently did a show about meditation, and the program includes actual meditations. They're just about 3 minutes. You can do it in your desk, and you'll probably reap some benefit from doing it, if only because you're taking a time out. And just go to the podcast for this show or that show on meditation. It's at nccradio.org, and you're welcome to share it with your friends and colleagues. Is sleep and exercise also important?
Well, I came up with a power of 5 formula.
Yes.
They all begin with the letter S, and sleep was one of them. Our society has given a lot of credit to people who had short sleep cycles and just didn't get enough sleep, and they were workaholics. And sooner or later, people crash and burn. But sleep has a couple of different attributes to it. Number one, it allows the brain to rest from a day's work. It also is a time when we could relieve itself or digest the metabolic byproducts of metabolism from the day. And getting the proper amount of sleep replenishes your whole body. So it's incredibly important to do that.
And if you, let's say you have a pressing deadline or you have a lot going on, you don't get those 8 hours one night, can you just try to balance it out and make up for it in the next night or two?
You may try. Science doesn't necessarily say it's effective. It's better to do that than not. But some people also believe that maintaining a pretty rigid schedule, like bedtime at the same time, getting up at the same time, balances your body a little bit better and works on some of the hormonal things that go on with us when we sleep.
And I know among the power of 5, you also mentioned that sex, socialization, and connections are important to avoid loneliness. Is that one of the dangers of being a workaholic, of focusing entirely on your work, that you're going to be isolated and not have that social connection, which is probably very important?
It's part of it, sure. I know as a practicing doctor, people would come in my office and they would be brought to me, and that was kind of like my socialization for the whole day. But when my work life was over, I had to and continue to work on building a repertoire of people in my community who I'm sociable with, because I know medically and hormonally the benefits and the psychological benefits of doing that. So it's incredibly important.
And some people feel, especially after COVID, after being in the work world, after maybe being more isolated or introverted, how can they do that? How can they take those steps?
Well, here's a couple of ideas. First, I want to reiterate the fact that the issues with loneliness and isolation preceded COVID. COVID made it worse, but we were starting to see that was developing to be a problem. And the whole idea of using the word sex is because sex is about intimacy, and the opposite of intimacy is loneliness. And that's a health hazard in and of itself. It's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day or being obese. So the second part of your question was, what can people do? Well, when your workday is over, put it in the done category and then go on and work on making friends, making acquaintances, join clubs, join community boards, something where you can interact with people and find people of the similar likes, or go to a class and learn how to do photography or something like that.
And you can also do volunteer work, whether it's a one-time thing or on an ongoing basis. People need help. You could do tutoring. You can work on a civic project. You can lend your professional expertise to an organization. You can join a community organization, a political cause. There are many things you can join. Work on some cause you believe in. Perhaps it will help you professionally as well, be good contacts for you. But everyone's going to have some kind of like-minded purpose.
It's almost like getting in the same room with your tribe. And when you're in a room with your tribe, that's what kind of overcomes the loneliness. But one of the important parts of this, Ken, is that it has to be done with intention. And you look around and say, well, I don't have enough social contacts. I don't have enough things going on in my life. I'm going to go out and do just those things you mentioned. And
your tribe, it's never too late to expand your tribe, to join a new tribe. And you can also join a civic or religious organization as well. There's plenty of organizations out there.
Absolutely true.
And you can come on your own and find projects that you enjoy, and you can reach out and become part of the group or part of aspects of the group.
You never know who you meet in those circumstances, and those connections can be lifelong, or they could fill the gaps that have been lost by people moving away or people dying as we get on in life, so that there's some real reason to include that in kind of your daily, weekly, monthly activity.
And if one doesn't work out, you just try another one.
True. and just be open to explore and go out on the skinny branches of doing something different. I think that's not on my list of things, but being adventurous and doing things that are not in the norm brings excitement to your life, and I think exhilaration.
And some things you can do, like taking a walk and maybe going to a lecture or even a movie, there are things you can do on your own, and you might find people there, doing those on the trail or at a movie or at some other event that you can talk to and make a connection with, even if it's for the moment.
Sure.
What about other food that people should incorporate in their diet? Let's say red wine or dark chocolate. Are these good for you?
Well, I avoid using the word diet. Okay. So
in your regimen, yes.
I'll talk about things like lifestyle. Okay. And a Mediterranean eating lifestyle seems to be the healthiest of the lifestyles that we can eat. My wife and I eat a vegan diet, if you were so inclined to know about that. And then the other thing, and you asked some really good questions. It seems as though a moderate amount of red wine can be helpful. Though as a physician throughout my career, I didn't go home, I tell people to go home and drink wine. If they ask, I'd say a small amount. Red wine seems to be the best, but don't abuse it. Don't drink to intoxication. Dark chocolate tends to be helpful. But when I talk about eating lifestyle, I encourage or I discourage people from having lots of sweet sugars and carbohydrates because they're hazardous. So if it's going to be dark chocolate, like the chocolate my wife will buy, it's going to be dark chocolate with the minimum amount of sugar in it. And then coffee has been shown to be of favorable benefits to longevity. So I encourage people to drink coffee if they're going to have a beverage sometime throughout the day.
I just want to remind our listeners, we're talking with Dr. David Bernstein. He's the geriatrician, and he's talking to us about how lawyers and others can thrive and live longer. And he's given us many good ideas so far. What are some other things to take care of and go for checkups concerning to prevent very bad situations that could have been prevented?
Well, as a physician, I'm all about preventive medicine, and we as physicians have our checklist of things to do to avoid some of those hazardous things. You get your colonoscopy and your mammograms and your annual exams. You get your blood tested and treated for high blood pressure or cholesterol. So seeing your doctor is important, and also listening to your doctor's advice. The other thing that I experienced and incorporated into my life is avoid risky behaviors. First, driving at night is hazardous. When I hear about auto accidents, they usually happen at night and all too often at 3 a.m. with head-on collisions. So being on the road at that time of day, bad thing. Drinking and driving. As an attorney, and the attorneys in your audience know that it's not good for your health. It's not good for your job, your reputation. And I've had experiences where it's affected people's estates. And so one of them was a situation in Queens, New York, when someone moved to Florida and told me about his situation, that he severely injured somebody while driving, and he was like close to 90 years old and shouldn't have been driving. One of the things that I've experienced in my career is people falling off ladders. One of the colleagues in town who retired was changing something in the kitchen, fell off the ladder and died. So I usually, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but would tell my patients, if you're over 65, don't go on a ladder and don't go climbing up on a roof. Only bad things happen when you fall off.
Are there other activities that someone should be more careful doing as they get older?
I think I'm going to say something funny, but, look at emergency reports and find out all the activities that people participated in to end up in the emergency room. But anything that's dangerous, anything that put them at risk for falling and doing sort of the opposite is keeping your muscles and bones in really good shape and working on your balance are some surefire ways of avoiding a fall. And falls have a way of having a really negative consequence in people's lives. And even my trainer's dad, who was an excellent bicycle rider into his 80s, was in an auto accident while he was hit by a car while riding his bicycle, and his life is incredibly altered. It will not turn out the way he was hoping. from before his accident.
So many of these activities, there's a safer way to do it versus a more risky approach. So if you're driving in good weather on roads with large areas, and even if you're on a bicycle, there are bike paths away from cars that are on good terrain at a moderate speed, as opposed to riding on a highway or in bad weather or on dirt. There are safer ways to pursue these activities, and it's something that people should think about as they get older.
And yeah, another way of describing my job is I'm a risk manager, and I would describe risks that people were taking, and I would discourage those risks.
And should they also be a little less competitive in sports, perhaps tennis or basketball, where there's a very important physical component?
I think there's some wisdom in that as well. Sometimes it's hard to turn off those competitive juices, but if you're being overly competitive, even in your 50s, I remember hearing about one of the great basketball players of my time, Bill Bradley, when he was a politician, said he doesn't play basketball after the age of 50 because that's how you rupture your Achilles tendons. So if you're overly aggressive as a basketball player, after 50, you're risking various things, and just turn down the competitiveness a little bit.
And what are some ways that someone can challenge their brain? Maybe they've been involved with work, or maybe haven't been involved socially because of COVID, or they've been focused on other things. What are some ways that someone can challenge their brain?
Well, here are a couple of different ones, and it all gets back to weaving some of the things I've spoken about into your life, but being involved on a community board, for example, or learning a new activity or taking classes. For me personally, I love to talk about the fact that while I was still working, I learned how to publish a book, which meant going to a course to learn how to write and how to publish, and meet with publicists and editors and book coaches, learn the writing process, learn how Amazon has changed the whole writing status, but learning a new career, like what you do, Ken. You're an attorney, but you also do work on radio, and you interview people, and you get a chance to stimulate your brain. Doing puzzles has reported as being beneficial. And the other thing is doing physical activity where you have to concentrate on your activity. So, for example, compound strength training, where you're doing a bicep curl and a squat, and you're counting that you're only going to do 6, and then you're going to switch to another activity. That's another good one. Tai Chi is an excellent way of combining the physical and the mental challenge of doing activities. So there are a bunch of things out there. Learning a new language has also been recommended as a way to really challenge your brain, or a musical instrument.
And I think you mentioned earlier, just being active every day or a couple of times a week is very important. Even if it's a slow walk to maybe go do it with someone else, or just surround yourself with nature, it's important to keep moving.
Absolutely. Keeping your brain engaged, keeping you physically active, it all comes together.
And you mentioned earlier that at a certain point in life, and it could be young, or even when someone's a little bit older or semi-retired, you've accumulated a certain amount of wisdom, and you can try to share it. You can write an article, you can put together a program, you can do a podcast, you can put together a group of people to share their expertise or insight, and this will help to make you feel valued and just pass on your wisdom to others who may benefit from it.
Sure. Reaching out to community colleges or even local schools to be a reading assistant for students in elementary schools can be incredibly valuable to the student and incredibly valuable to the person doing the teaching.
And even at a civic organization, everyone might have different expertise, or a group might have particular interest in certain aspects of the law or finance or something else, and you can help to fill that gap.
And it's twofold, because when you're doing that and you're filling that gap, you're providing a service, but you're also doing something that's helping other people. And it's a way, maybe a way to express your gratitude and giving back to society. And there's emotional benefits or even chemical benefits that happen in your body that are beneficial to the one doing that activity.
So it's good all around.
Yes.
I would just like to remind our listeners that we're talking with Dr. David Bernstein. He's a geriatrician, and he's talking about how lawyers and others can thrive and live longer, do other things to give back to the community, maybe for legal work or professional work, or just to share their knowledge and experience and wisdom. And Doctor, you've written some books giving more information about some of the concepts we've been talking about. Just take a moment to tell us about each of your books, what a reader can learn from them, and where to obtain more information about them.
I'm glad you asked. Ken, my first book is I've got some good news and some bad news you're old, Tales of a Geriatrician. And it describes the 5 things that I found that older adults who thrived had as traits. They had goals or a purpose in life. They knew their DNA and their roots. They had a positive attitude with gratitude and kindness. They maintained companionship, and they interacted with their environment. My second book, The Power of 5, The Ultimate Formula for Longevity and Remaining Youthful, recommends avoiding sweets, avoiding stress, and getting more sleep, sweat, exercise, and sex, socialization, and connections. Both of my books are available on Amazon and also through my website. And my website is powerof5life.com. And I can be reached at david@powerof5life.com. And I want to mention one more thing, Ken, is that to make it easier for people, I've converted my Power of 5 book into an online course, which is also available on my website. And I think it's a real treasure.
Okay. Now, and I'll give you a chance to just remind our listeners about those titles a little later in the program. In terms of goals and purpose, it's never too late to bring in some new goals, to put in some new purpose, especially as we're emerging from COVID. Maybe some of our friends have gone to other environments, have moved on, and we're no longer in touch. We can always, it's important to always find new things that interest us that will help us fulfill a purpose.
You're absolutely right. We have to have a purpose in life, or there's nothing to get up for in the morning. And I can tell you about some of my patients who did that, but some of my patients who didn't, and they had really pretty lonely lives. And their hearts kept ticking, but they didn't have any integration in what was going on in the world.
And what are some new things that someone can try to do if other things dry up or as they get older?
Working in community projects, working through your civic organizations, even your religious organizations often have projects and programs that people can become involved in. I think you have to find your passion, and if you can find it, ask one of your friends or family members to point you in a direction, or say, photography is really fun, or let's go to some museums and see if there's something that strikes your fancy. It's sad for me when I've seen people only put forth their effort through their career, be it an accountant or a lawyer or anything. And even some of my doctor friends have had little engagement in their community. And when the time comes and they are no longer going to work, that they don't have anything to do for themselves.
And do you think that's important for lawyers or accountants or other professionals at any age to have a focus besides the law, perhaps help engage people who have a small or dwindling universe to try to give back to their profession or their community?
I think it's a matter of what turns you on, but I think it's important to have something other than just your own occupation, because, one day you might not be able to do it and then you'll have nothing else. I had a visit with my friend, a doctor friend today, and he's fearful of retiring because he doesn't have those other interests to fall back on and doesn't know what he'll do. So one has to start cultivating it at an earlier age.
And you can slow down professionally and gradually add in these other activities so that you have a fulfilled life.
And it's really one of the great things about some professions like law and accounting, where there's not a huge physical demand, but one should keep themselves physically fit to be able to do their job. I mean, they have to get up, they got to get out of bed, they got to get in their car, and they go to work and do those things, but also look for avenues that will continue to provide you information and things that can really be helpful in terms of prospering in life. You need other ideas and other focuses.
And as you mentioned, as things dry up, you can try to add new things to the mix. You can always volunteer for someone, join some professional or civic organization.
Correct.
Doctor, just tell us again about your 2 books and the information available on your website.
First book, I've got some good news and some bad news you're old, Tales of a Geriatrician. And I outline some things that people can incorporate in their lives. They're traits that I found in people. And the Power of 5 is about 5 things to go out and intentionally incorporate in life. Eat right, exercise, get best sleep, reduce stress, and socialize. Those are 5 things that you can put on a list and check them off every day. I use a journal where I have those 5 things and I check them off every day to make sure that I include them in my daily activities. So I don't call how I eat a diet, but it's my eating lifestyle. And it's a healthy lifestyle that reduces sugar and carbohydrates.
And even if someone can't do it 100%, it's best they move their diet in that direction. Less meat and more good things.
Start slow, start low, go slow, gradually incorporate those things that are healthy. And the information is in my books, but also way out there for all to see in terms of healthy eating, healthy exercise, healthy sleep patterns, and so forth.
And with the activities, it's good to think about those things every day and start to incorporate them in your day and in your week and in your routine.
Correct. The recommendations are at least 150 minutes a week, which is 30 minutes 5 days a week, and building up to maybe 450 minutes, which is 90 minutes 3 days a week. Having muscle strength, having good balance are some of the things that enable us to persevere and continue to thrive in life. So, Ken, if there are listeners out there who are working in a law job and they sit for 8 hours a day, that's bad for their health. They need to be getting up and walking during the day and going out and doing things, working on their balance, because one of the screening tests for dementia is checking to see if people can balance on one leg for 20 seconds. So I challenge people in your audience to do it barefoot at home and try and stand on one leg for 20 seconds. It's not easy.
And it's good for people to do all these. People can try to do some of these things at the same time, to socialize and take a walk with someone and combine the best of both worlds.
You got it, Ken. Great idea.
And one last time is for your website for Dr. David Bernstein.
powerof5life.com.
And that's the number 5.
The number 5.
I'd like to thank David Bernstein, who is a geriatrician, for being our guest on Law You Should Know. And keep in mind his books, The Power of 5, and good news and some bad news when you're older. And he mentioned his website, The Power of the number 5 of life.com. And please join us if you missed any portion of this program, you want to tell someone else about it, or listen to our program meditation, just go to our website, nccradio.org, for the podcast. And please join us this same time next week here on WHPC 90.3, the voice of Nassau Community College, for another program on Law You Should Know.